What's happening, friends, family, and fellow YouTubers and podcasters alike? We're going full headsets today just because we've been playing with our soundboard. I mean, guys, we are rookies trying to figure this stuff out, but we're having fun. Today, we want to come at you guys. We want to talk about some stuff that's pretty intense that everybody should be interested in or concerned about, and that is modern monetary theory. Let's talk about inflation, M2 money supply, treasuries, Fed. We also want to talk about this little thing called Bitcoin.
Ooh.
The bitty corns and cryptocurrencies and how that could play a role as not only a speculative asset that it's been over the past decade, but more of a safe haven asset. I want to kind of get into maybe why that is.
I love all of those things. So do we want to kind of first, I mean, I don't know if everyone
Let's talk about what we talk about first. Because
modern monetary policy, like just talk what that is real fast, like why that is a thing.
Yeah, I'd never even heard about it until I'd read Glenn Beck's last book about the Great Reset.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I was like, this makes so much sense. This is what they're doing.
Well, it's the only explanation as to how can political parties or politicians continue to spend and look at a deficit that's running year after year after year and not think it's a problem, right? Because any household that runs a deficit like that, it's a problem. It's a big problem. But somehow for the government, it's not. And it's because you have those in power who subscribe to this ideology.
It's
right?
kind of like your Black Friday budget on the credit cards. I mean, just spend more.
Just spend more. It's like it already hurts, so might as well
just spend
hurt
more.
A lot. Yeah, it's on sale.
Yeah, but that's the idea. So the general idea is like, and if you look at how our government has been operating, very specifically in the last, say, 3 to 5 years, even Trump's slightly guilty of this. My man Trump made some mistakes, man.
He saw the opportunity.
Yeah, I did, and that's the thing. It's not a red versus blue debate here. These clowns all want to print more money. You have more power. You got more money to do stuff. You're gonna look more awesome. And most recently, Janet Yellen has been printing a cool $1 trillion every single quarter. Like, think about that.
That's a lot.
What was the national debt? Like 10 years ago, what was the national debt?
It was like 20. If it was it
no, it was like nothing.
Yeah, it's a lot now.
It's like we've quadrupled the debt.
I don't think people really understand what $1 trillion is. Like that number gets thrown around, and it just no one really gets it. But so I mean, break it down at its most simplest explanation. Modern monetary policy is essentially that the government can print as much money as they want, as long as they control the inflation rate on certain types of goods and services that the majority of the population depend on, right? So if they control food prices and housing and transportation and those types of things, energy, if they can keep a lid on the inflation surrounding just those items, they can print as much money as they want.
Yeah, they want to put in a new bridge, they just print the money to put the bridge in. They want to go fight another war over here and it's going to cost this much money, they just do it. And obviously you can see why the war hawks and the Nikki Haley groups and John McCain's and these guys are like, yeah, go war, let's fight wars.
Yeah,
it is and the people who benefit from that is like, well, they know they can just get the government is just going to print the money to put it in there, and anybody that has like a fiscal brain is like going like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean it forces you to think about money as something different, right? It's not like we all think of money as it's got this value that is, it's kind of like in the ether here. I don't know how to explain it, right? But it's really just this token that we agree has money, and so we transact on it. And sometimes we're transacting on our time or our service, and sometimes it's for goods, right, or materials. But ultimately, we're all just agreeing that, hey, that amount of material is worth this much money, and the government is just getting to print it, and then they're getting the goods for essentially just hitting the print button. And so now you've got politicians who are in places of real substantial power as far as where that money goes, and I mean they're just essentially buying power and influence with printed money.
It's insane.
Yeah.
We got to get into the weeds here real quick about like why this is a problem and what people are thinking. So just real quick, as the Fed tried to curb this inflation, to try to keep things in check, even though they printed all this money and put all this money into circulation, they've now raised rates all the way over 5%, right? And so as the 10-year Treasury note hit 5%, it rejected hard and it's come back down. And we're at like 4.21 today, which is great. There was a hard reject, and it looks like that was the ceiling, and like the market's like, no more, we can't take it, let's come back down.
Yeah.
But there's been this sharp decline, fastest ever in M2 money supply, and that is money being lent out. And so there's just not as much dollars being put into circulation, which is causing this restriction. And anytime we've had even a remotely similar retraction in M2 money supply, all these other economic forces coming together means the recession is coming.
Yeah.
And at the rate of the retraction, it looks like it's like hard landing is all but assured.
Yeah. I was watching this, just a little Instagram reel, or I don't know what it was, YouTube, but it was Dave Smith, who's a comedian, but he's a libertarian guy, champion of libertarian ideas, right? But he was just gave a real simple explanation of how the banking system works, right? And he says, hey, if you go and you deposit $100 in your bank, well, that bank takes 90 of it and goes and makes loans to other people, right? So if we follow that down, the next guy takes that $90, and what does he do with it? He goes and puts it in his bank. And so this other bank then takes this $90 and they lend out 81 of it to another guy. And then that guy takes that, and where does he go? Into another bank. So like this fractional reserve system isn't just as basic as, banks are lending out 90% of what they have on deposit. It's that times infinity.
Well,
because every next person who gets that lent out money is doing the same thing and over and over and over again. Like,
it's even more insane than that, though,
Yeah.
because they can take, let's say that $100, they can take that $100 and go to the Fed window and say, hey, we have this $100.
Yeah.
And they leverage that $100, and they can get, basically the bank can get a loan. And this is what was so crazy during COVID. Obviously, that was like at 0%
Yeah.
when they'd go to that window, or 0.25%, and they could get up to 13x that deposit. So they get $100 or $1,300 off your $100.
Yeah. So, and I'm just adding that to like what you're talking about, M2 money supply, because that's what was going on. And then, like you said, during COVID, it was basically times infinity. There was no limit. They could go to the Fed and get more and more money each time. But now, like you were saying, the M2 money supply, essentially what that means is these banks and these entities, they're worried about their balance sheet. Mm-hmm. They're worried about their reserves for when people come to get their cash out the bank. Well, and so they're not lending out as much as they were now, or they're doing it at much higher rates, or they are restricting, like making the criteria harder to qualify for these loans. Like,
way harder.
There's a huge impact. So, when you're talking about especially small businesses, I think those are probably the guys that are suffering the most, because access to money and capital is getting a lot harder than it was.
Well, you mentioned one thing too, just to touch on, like, I don't take the time to pull up the chart, but you should look at Google this, like, unrealized losses by major banks right now. It's like the great financial crisis of 2008 looks like patty cakes compared to what we're looking at right now. If there was like a call or a run on the banks or anything like that, like some kind of a credit event that would trigger these banks to realize these losses. And what it means by unrealized losses means that if you bought a 10-year Treasury note at, say, 1.5%, well, and you bought it in 2021, well, that 10-year Treasury note does not mature until 2031. And so if you have to sell that prior to maturity, you have to take a haircut. So if you go to the market tomorrow with a 1.5% coupon 10-year Treasury note and you try to sell that, when someone can go buy a new 10-year Treasury note at 4.21% today, why would you buy a 1.5? You would not. And so that value of the 1.5 Treasury note is like pennies on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar, whatever it is. I don't know what the current market goes for.
Yeah.
And so that's what they mean when they say unrealized losses. And so if you're a bank and you bought a $100 million worth of 10-year Treasury notes back then when money was free, you're sitting on like $80 million or whatever of an unrealized loss, because if you can hold it through maturity to 2031, you'll be just fine. But if there is a credit event between now and then, they're dead.
Yeah.
And so
That's what happened to
all these banks that have crashed this year, that's
Yeah.
why. Because they've had some kind of a credit event internally in the bank, and so the FDIC has stepped in and taken over. So imagine, though, there's a major event and something happens. That's what's going to be the problem. So we look at that, and a lot of these guys, these major forecasters, they've been like waiting for this just absolute destruction in the bond market, and it kind of hasn't come yet. We're just kicking this can down the road, and so it was like, how much longer can this can get kicked down the road? And what does that mean?
Yeah.
Obviously, the pullback in rates and the 10-year Treasury coming down,
That's been good.
It helps everybody because it kind of feels like there's this relief, and it does for us as mortgage lenders because we're seeing interest rates drop. We're getting rates back down. I mean, we're seeing the 6s again instead it was 7 and 8s. So
Right.
that tastes a little better. But
Yeah. I mean, I said it before. I said it yesterday, I think, on the other podcast we recorded, which is at a certain point, like, you keep thinking like this is all coming down. It's all going to crash on top of itself. But like, they keep kind of proving that it works somehow, right? Like, somehow they can keep kicking this can down the road. They can keep printing more money, and
that's what I
it
don't get.
hasn't
It's like they don't
collapsed
really
yet.
seem that concerned, and it like as a person with like quote unquote fiscal responsibility, you look at it like what in the world is going on?
Yeah.
And that's why you see some politicians, specifically the libertarian ones, that are losing their minds because
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, essentially what shored up the banks is an accounting trick,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The Fed essentially said, we will guarantee all your unrealized losses, right? We will basically give you a loan at face value for all of the treasuries you hold on your balance sheet. And just the mere fact that they say that, essentially it opens up a whole new accounting trick that every bank can now do, right? They can basically say, like, we don't have to mark these as unrealized losses. We can mark them as face value. And so now they're all, what do they call it? They're all they pass the means test, right? They're all liquid at this point just because of this accounting trick. Whereas, yeah, they're all very close to a run on the bank would take a lot of these banks out.
Yeah.
Without that little trick by the Fed. I don't know.
So it's interesting to see. So obviously we're looking at it like, what is real inflation? What are the real inflation numbers like? And what does that mean for you and your dollar and, currencies around the world and stuff? And I think this is where things are going to get really dicey in the next, let's call it decade or 7 years. We're going to shorten it up. Let's say through the rest of this decade to 2030.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's going to be interesting. Like, how do we get through this without there being some kind of a crash? It feels like there has to be just because things are so out of whack.
Well, I mean, I try to break this down.
Crash. I mean, when I'm talking crash too, guys, I'm talking
Yeah.
like stock market. I'm talking maybe like a dollar crash. I'm not talking real estate crash. I'm having a hard time seeing it. I just don't see where it's going to come from. And the builders are slowing down in production. So I don't see this glut of houses out there.
I say this to a lot of friends. Like, look, when real estate crashes, it's going to be because everything else crashed.
Crashed first.
And there won't be a bank to foreclose on you. So we'll worry about that when it comes. But I feel like, maybe what's going to break is like the spirit of the American dream, right? Like, it really is. Like, think of just maybe just call it 10 years ago, right? How much was a movie?
$5.
It was maybe 8.
5 years ago?
Let's call it 10 years ago. It was $8 for a movie.
No way, dude. Really?
Yeah.
I think less, but whatever.
Maybe. I just remember
it's like $12 now. Like 10 years
ago. Is it $12?
Dude, 10 years ago, you were paying $5 for a movie.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I paid like $18 a ticket for a movie. If you book it online and it's like one of those sitting in a couch things, it's like $16.
Just gotta go Fat Cats, bro.
Maybe I'm going to the wrong place.
Yeah.
Anywho, if I take my family to the movies right now, it's like $140.
Yeah, it's a real experience.
It's something stupid.
By the time you roll out with the popcorn and everything.
Whereas like, date night 10, 15 years ago, it was like you could get out of there for $24. You might have to stuff a few red vines in your pockets, but you were good.
Hit the Circle K on your way
right.
in.
You went to dinner. I mean, I just think like even 5 years ago, going out to dinner with my wife, like, dude, you could be in and out for $60 easily with appetizers, like easy.
Yeah, that was a nice dinner.
Bro, there's not a chance you're getting out of dinner without $100 bill being spent at like a sit down like a nice little restaurant.
I mean, yeah, a nice place. Bro, just take your wife to Applebee's.
Dude, Applebee's is not. That's not date night, bro. That's not happening. But I'm just like,
where do you guys go for date night? I mean, let's say like I think you could pull off date night. Let's be real. I don't want to get on too big of a tangent, but I think you could pull off date night for $50-$60 still.
Maybe. Well, the point I'm making is that wherever you go for dinner, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was $30, and now it's $60.
Oh, of course. Yes.
And
agreed. Well, it's just like lunch, dude. Lunch was $5, then it became $7, then it was like $8, and then it like jumped over 10 and went straight to 12.
Yeah.
It's
no,
like,
12,
get out of here.
It's
like,
12 plus tax.
Yeah, dude. We used to go,
no drink.
You go get your sandwich, chips, and a drink, and there was it was $8, $9, and then all of a sudden you go like your same sandwich shop and like you're going to check out and it's $14.95, and you're like, okay, dude.
Yeah.
For my sandwich and chips, I don't think so.
Yep. So I like,
that's
and then
inflation.
think of this, right? Like, and then your cell phone bill, and then your this bill, and your that bill. Like, internet used to be $30 a month somehow for like the fastest high speed Cox internet. It was not this, and now it's like if you don't call them every 6 months, they'll jack your internet up to like $150.
Yeah.
Like everything across the board, it's happening all over the place. So
I was thinking about cars, dude, because like
cars. Oh my
gosh.
All
the automakers are like, we're going to slow down production of our cars. And because there's just not as much demand, and it's like, well, because a new car is $60,000, and the one that the guy bought 4 years ago, he paid $40,000, and you're looking at your $40,000 car versus the $60,000 car, and you're like, pretty sure this is the same car.
Yep.
So yeah, I've got 40,000 miles on this, but it just doesn't make sense, and so that's the thing I see.
Yeah.
Like.
But that right there is my point, though, right? At a certain point, that's what I'm more worried about. Is at a certain point, people just throw up their hands, man, and they're just like, "What?"
I think we've kind of reached that point right now.
What is there left to do? Like, how many jobs can people get? How much, like, health insurance? How many people just stop doing health insurance? How many people just stop going to the doctor because it's just so dang expensive? Like, just to go to the doctor, like, if you don't have the best health insurance, a doctor's $200 just to walk in the door. Like, like every little thing, it stacks, it adds up, and there's just too many. It's like death by 1,000 cuts.
Let's shift into the Black Friday numbers we were joking about. Did you see on that they said it's the biggest Black Friday ever weekend?
Okay.
But they said there was a 46% increase in the buy now, pay later stuff.
Oh, that hurts.
And they're like, so basically these guys are just, I mean, they're all banging on credit or these buy now, pay later things. So I just, the people that do that, I'm thinking like, what part of later thinks you're going to be able to afford it more later if you can't buy it now? It's just kind of an odd, like I get the mentality.
Yeah.
But man, we're going back in time, guys, from like financial literacy. Like, no, I thought we got rid of this kind of crap with like payday loans and stuff.
Have you ever seen the guy that he's like Dave Ramsey, but he's like a young dude. He's been on YouTube lately, but he like sits people down and goes through their finances and just shreds them.
Oh, I think so. But I'm anti Dave Ramsey because that guy's a clown.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if this guy's got the same ideas. I'm just saying he goes through people's like bank statements and he's like,
oh yeah,
$9 on a coffee every day, and you haven't made a student loan payment in 7 years. Like, and the person's like, I can't afford them. And he's just like, 9 times 27. That's how many times you did that this month. And the people are just like, what?
Yeah, but that's what people do. We drink Starbucks coffee.
And the guy's like, what's this $57,000 car loan? And then they're like, oh, it's my Honda Civic. And he's like, $57,000 for a Honda Civic? He's like, well, I was upside down on my last 4 cars, so...
Yeah, they just keep rolling,
People are just shredding themselves to death.
Don't do that. Don't roll negative equity. That is, it's just a compounding problem.
Just don't buy a car. If it gets that bad, you just got to ride that bad boy out.
The bus?
No, like the bad car deal you did. Like, don't make it worse.
I know.
I don't know, man. It just... Stuff like this just kills me, because it's like everyday, normal people doing well, people struggling, everyone gets this sentiment of just getting nickeled and dimed to death.
Well, it's every turn though.
Yeah.
It's just like all the dumb things. Like, I'm going to a place to buy lunch today, right? I order my lunch. And the guy, no joke, he's okay. So, yeah, the thing's going to ask you a couple of questions on here.
The tip.
He just took my order. And now, because he took my order behind the counter, I've got to answer these questions. And I'm not kidding you. It's like 25%, 20%, 18%, or skip. I'm like, yeah. I mean, sorry, guy, but skip.
We're going to catch some
You're
heat.
already getting paid $15 an hour.
We're going to catch some heat for this.
No, it's so dumb, dude. Like, I'm not tipping. Are you coming and bringing it
If
to
I'm
me?
ordering at the counter...
If
I'm ordering it at the counter, I'm sorry. Like, maybe if it's a place where you bring it to me and I just get to leave it, but I had to order at the counter,
yeah.
I might tip. And honestly, I'll probably just leave some money on the table rather than tip you at the machine.
But if you never leave behind the counter and all you did is say, what would you like? And you're like, I will have number 12.
And you got to tip them?
And he punches it in and says, okay, it's going to ask you some questions. Like, no, dude, it was already ridiculous. And I just paid you $14 for lunch.
Yeah.
I'm not tipping.
The one time I will do that is at Tacos Tijuana's because I don't want them to go anywhere. I'll tip at Tacos Tijuana's. All right?
Okay.
I need that place to stay around. It's good.
It's not going to do that. Place is packed all the time.
I
Okay,
know.
so check this out, guys. So what does all this craziness mean? Number one, the value of your dollar is slipping.
Mm-hmm.
Government is not going to stop printing, so it's probably just going to continue to slip. We need rates to come down, so we need all this other stuff to kind of play along, but it's just going to turn into this hot, jumbled mess. So the thing that's really kind of been, I've been interested in this since 2017, been an investor in it for a long time. Wish I would have acquired more during the down cycles, the interesting timing.
Mm-hmm.
But cryptocurrency, Bitcoins. It's funny because most people that are probably watching this right now definitely view it as like, well, that's, they're probably warmed up to the idea because I've been hearing about it for a long enough time. But it's probably still a foreign concept. It's probably still scary.
Mm-hmm.
Probably still don't completely understand what it is. But for the longest time, and rightfully so, Bitcoin and everything else has been like, kind of a speculative asset because of just the volatility, right? It's something that like, hey, when money's printing and things are going crazy, everyone's buying it and speculation's through the roof. I think the narrative on Bitcoin is about to shift in 2024. That it's going to go to a safety asset. It's still going to be a speculative asset, don't get me wrong. But I think because there's going to be such uncertainty globally with the currencies globally and economies globally and inflation and all this stuff, that people are going to look to crypto, specifically Bitcoin, as a flight to safety.
I could see that. So I agree with you in some places there, but I also have an opinion that I don't know what your thoughts are. So
that's why we're talking.
100%, I think Bitcoin is going to rally hard again. It's at some point here in the near future. But maybe I'll put it this way, right? Like if I was someone who owned a lot of Bitcoin, right? More than most in the world, and I wanted to sell it, you can't really take a mass, like I'm talking billions and billions and billions of dollars of Bitcoin. You can't really go to Coinbase right now and start selling that. If you did, with any kind of, quantity that helped you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, right, which is get Bitcoin to dollars, you're going to tank the You're going to tank the price. Like you by yourself would do it because you just have too much of it.
Also kind of not true, but keep going. I hear what you're saying.
Okay. So if I was that guy and I was, maybe head of a huge hedge fund or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. What would I want? I would want to create buyers for Bitcoin. And so I would create an ETF that it would allow all the pensions and 401ks and Vanguards and all those types of accounts to start buying Bitcoin so that I would have an endless supply of buyers to unload all my Bitcoin into cash and leave someone else holding the bag.
Contrarian.
It's just that is my feeling about this whole BlackRock ETF.
You think it's their off-ramp?
I think it's straight up those that have massive amounts of Bitcoin. They need some, like it's like Warren Buffett says, right? Like Bitcoin has no value except what the next guy will pay, right? And I don't want to argue against whether it's got some utility, because I do think that some of that is there. I don't totally agree with Warren Buffett here. But if you owned Bitcoin and you own so much of it, it's really worthless to you unless someone else will pay enough, right? Will pay more for it. And so if you have to sell so much of it to accomplish your goals, you need buyers. You need consistent buyers for it.
I would agree with that if the BlackRocks of the world were the ones that held all this Bitcoin in the beginning, and they're not.
I thought this was a...
They're not the holders.
What is the...
That's why they're trying to create this, is so they have an on-ramp. I don't disagree with you down the line, but right now they've tried to figure out, they hold trillions of dollars in assets under management. So does Vanguard and all these other guys that have all filed for Bitcoin ETFs.
Yeah.
Is because they want to be able to go to their institutional clients and look at it this way. If you know that the stock market and the system, the treasury, the treasury market and everything that you're looking at now is primed to completely implode upon itself because it's a hot mess. You got stocks trading at 80 times earnings, just ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
Like, do you not want to maybe like, oh, well, let's create this little, like, if we can create an ETF where we can spot, and then we could siphon off 5-10% of our portfolios and start putting them into Bitcoin or cryptos, we can offload and have a safe haven. I mean, that's just one of my theories here.
How much gold does BlackRock hold in their portfolio?
I don't know, but the total market cap of gold, like Bitcoin or all of cryptocurrency market cap right now is it's like I should have this data.
Yeah.
It's like $1 trillion.
Yes.
I don't even think it's $1 trillion currently. I think
Correct.
it's under that.
Yeah.
At its peak, it was like 1.4 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
The gold market cap, I want to say, is 10 something trillion, something like that.
Yeah.
So even if like 5% or 10% of the people who held gold came and said, let's diversify out of our gold and silver and precious metals and put it into cryptocurrency, it would more than double the cryptocurrency market value.
So I don't say what I'm saying to argue why Bitcoin is going to tank or something like that, right? Like it's just some Ponzi scheme. I'm just saying it like it really, like if BlackRock thought Bitcoin was this great buy, wouldn't they already own like gold type of assets, right? Stores of value. But most of the time, a company like BlackRock should be seeking yield. They should be looking for a yield on their dollars, right? And although not every company on the stock market pays a dividend, there's still yield in the sense that, like, hey, that company's revenue can grow, which can then have it be more valuable, and then stock prices will go up for that reason.
So your theory that Bitcoin, the BlackRocks of the world are filing for an ETF is so they can offload the Bitcoin that you believe they already hold.
And I'm just saying, like, if you think Larry Fink is just a Boy Scout, then you might think that.
No,
but
I don't. I think he's the opposite of
he's probably also connected to those that own most of the Bitcoin in the world.
I don't believe that's true.
You don't think so?
No.
Oh, dude.
Bitcoin is the people's money.
Buyers.
Power to the people.
Oh, buddy.
Bro. Like, I agree, obviously, there's people.
Can we ride the wave? 100%.
Yeah, no,
but are we making the wave?
No,
we're just trying to catch a ride.
Now, that's what they... yeah, but do they want to make that... I believe they're getting involved and so that they can create the wave because they look at it like, hey, this is the new frontier.
Yeah.
Our trillions of dollars can be...
I should stop recording, but we could just...
Dang, this is getting hot right here.
We can... So what were we just talking about? We're talking about Larry Fink being what's his name?
Well, what I was getting at...
Satoshi.
So, no, but I'm looking at it like this. Like, okay, so you are... If you're Larry Fink and BlackRock and you have $4 trillion assets under management, and Vanguard has 2.3 trillion, and you got ARK Invest with a few $100 million, whatever, all these different guys, like I see them looking at Bitcoin being like, hey, we can get in here, and with this ETF, we can, because we're such a big whale in a small pond, we really can manipulate the price of this.
Totally.
We can put all this money in and it's going to drive this price all up. We're going to look like heroes, but then we can start to kind of play with this market a little bit and figure out how to make it work. And we can go in there and do short calls and trigger shorts and sell, and then we can drive the price back up, and there's going to be this wild, wild west frontier until it kind of figures out and finalizes and settles in on like a price target.
Well, at a certain point, it has to peg to something, right? And right now, it's acting like it's not pegged to the dollar, right?
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like gold is always pegged to the dollar.
That's
the
what's
dollar's
been so
pegged
fascinating
to other
about it,
currencies.
though. Because look at the market, look at the S&P and everything else. Like, when that stayed stagnant, crypto also, Bitcoin's all of a sudden rallied.
I mean, I'm agreeing with you in the
35%.
sense, like I'm agreeing with you in what you're saying. I guess I just think I'm probably talking about it more on like a nihilistic view of like, hey, the world's coming to melt down and people are trying to take their net worth and reallocate it into things that buy them power and control, right? And so Bitcoin doesn't necessarily give you power and control, but dollars converted to owning countries and land and resources does. And so that's where I'm talking about. Like, I think there are some people that are trying to liquidate.
Okay, so
as in the weeds.
I know. Yeah, he just for those of you,
I'm in the weeds.
The scenario he just is very doomsday-ish, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy a doomsday scenario.
Yeah.
But more than likely, if we dodge the doomsday scenario, okay, or even we're getting a little doomsday-ish, but the world advances further. The world, if you guys have not paid attention to this, is advancing into what's called Web 3.0, right? We're moving out of the Internet of Things stage, okay, where we have the internet and www, whatever, and we're going into this Web 3 blockchain world. So if you, and that's known, right? This is something that's openly discussed. And so if you are a BlackRock or Vanguard who controls the majority of the free capital of this world, do you want to be a player in that? Or are you wanting to liquidate money and get your money out and go buy land? No, they want to be a player in the financial institution. So what I'm saying is in the future, not saying tomorrow, not saying even 6 months from now, maybe 12 months from now, but I believe that the market and a large portion of the assets, like money assets, are going to flood into the cryptocurrency space because it is a blockchain. It is trackable. It is safe. It is secure. It hands down is a better technology than the digital money that we have now. It's a better system. I know it's speculative. That's why I'm saying is that system. The stock market is a joke, really.
Yeah.
If you look at this is kind of where we go back to the beginning. If you look at the M2 money supply and you look at this chart from 1960 to today, you see this thing. Now you take that chart and you layer it over the top of the S&P 500, they almost match identically.
Yeah.
As the influx of capital has been printed and put into currency.
Dollars seek a yield.
Yeah, and it starts to go and go and go. But if we go with this modern monetary theory and we just keep on keeping on in the system that we just keep printing trillions and trillions of dollars every year, stock market go up, right? If that's what happens, as long as nothing breaks. I just don't think you can keep doing that without something breaking. And so when that thing breaks and the system of creating all this money out of nowhere, it's the exact same thing like someone, Bitcoin doesn't, whatever. It's like, well, at least Bitcoin is code and you know exactly there's a 21 million supply. It is code. It's not Janet Yellen going, well, I need another trillion, so print. It's not a person back there just dictating how much it is.
Well, this goes back to what I was saying, though. Just like until Bitcoin pegs to something, it is really, it doesn't matter that it's a static number of coins. Like Bitcoin has to peg to something so that then that restricts the inflation.
To what?
Exactly, right? Like people have to decide like one Bitcoin is worth 7,000 hours of human life, right? Like it's got to peg to something that's in comparison, right? Because in a vacuum, Bitcoin's worth nothing if there's no one to transact with it. And so there's got to be an opposing idea of value on the other side of a Bitcoin. And so right now it's kind of the dollar, but it's also not really pegged to the dollar because of what people are doing with modern monetary theory. Like it's its whole different thing. But eventually it's got to settle into, like there's got to be a comparison. There's got to be a value measurement on the other side that we can peg it to.
And I love that. And here's the thing. So as the countries of this whole world, they devolve into chaos, which they're proven to do because they don't have a money printer. So these guys globally, something like Bitcoin that has a fixed finite thing is going to become more and more attractive because it's not tied to a government or bonehead decisions.
Yeah.
And as these systems of the world and these countries implode and currencies implode and change, I think as the dust settles, Bitcoin is the new system that rises to the top. I think it's going to be insanely volatile for a while, and then it's going to just kind of settle in and find a value. And I think when it settles in and finds a value, one whole Bitcoin is going to be like $1 million.
Yeah.
And people will be be trading in Satoshis.
Here's the kind of where I'm getting at though, is like when Bitcoin reaches $1 million, my house is probably worth $19 million, right? So now I got to come up with 19 Bitcoin, which is essentially 19 times 4, like 40.
It could.
You know what I mean? Like it's not.
Maybe
it's got to. Until we have something different to measure it against, it's kind of still just gonna. I think it still all just translates to dollars, right?
But I mean, yes and no, because I think the dollar collapses.
Yeah. And then that's where it's like, that's where you might really see what it's worth, right? Because then you've got an actual finite amount of it, dollars are gone, and we have to decide what's the new value of a Bitcoin, right? Is one Bitcoin worth what today is a $5 million mansion?
Yeah.
Or is it worth what today is a $200,000 townhome? And so, like, I think it's when dollars are gone and we have nothing to compare it to, what does a Bitcoin get you in actual value or work or
we just don't want to go back to trade. I mean, we don't want it to go back. Obviously, like if I'm sitting here talking to you guys and saying, hey, this is a conversation for later, but it's like, I'd say have gold, have tangible gold, silver, like have it. Like in your pocket, in your possession, have things that are tradable of value in case of this doomsday scenario. But I still think that as this whole system, crumbles, hopefully it doesn't happen for a long time. But like before this last crash, did you guys know that you could stake your Bitcoin, and then you could get a loan against your Bitcoin? So let's say you were some guy that had 10 Bitcoin, okay? And you staked your Bitcoin on a platform. You could then borrow against your 10 Bitcoin. Let's say it's worth it, the 50 grand a piece Bitcoin. So you had $500,000 stake. You could go borrow 50% of that at a reasonable rate, honestly, 6.99% or something, and get a loan in dollars for say $250,000, and then go use that to buy more Bitcoin or whatever else you wanted to do at the time. And it's what's called DeFi or decentralized finance. And the future, I think, as we move out of this traditional finance world and move into that's what it's going to look like. And then you and I, instead of being mortgage brokers brokering banks, we're going to evolve into some, kind of cryptocurrency backed mortgage type of a scenario.
Oh, dude.
It's going to get interesting. It's going to get weird.
It's going to get real weird. I like where this has gone today. I really do. I'm not like a real nihilist. I don't know that I think the world is coming to an end, but I like to take the extremes because to me, it gives me clarity, right? Like, I don't think there's just some like group of 10 guys who are planning this BlackRock ETF who are ready to unload all their Bitcoin, right? But I definitely think there could be a part of that where it's like, that could be a part of the picture. But at the same time, just like you said, right? Like, there's money to be made there, right? And if BlackRock and all these ETFs that might happen, they can make some money while putting their 401ks and pensions and all these assets that they have under management into some Bitcoin, they're going to do it. And that for sure is going to drive the price up.
The interesting thing is like, you look at, I mean, regardless of what you believe their motives are, the fact of the matter is Fidelity, Vanguard, BlackRock, all of these major financial institutions have filed for Bitcoin ETFs. And that is meaning that they want to be able to trade Bitcoin in spot and take these pension funds, the state of New York pension fund that has, $1.5 trillion, and take even 5% of that portfolio and buy Bitcoin with it. If they do that and they're successful, the price of Bitcoin skyrockets.
Yeah.
So I look at people like, Michael Saylor, who is the CEO of MicroStrategies, which is a top S&P 500 company. He literally takes all the profit that company makes and he puts it into Bitcoin. He's now spent $5.8 billion of his company's money in Bitcoin. So his company rises and falls on Bitcoin. This dude is a brilliant MIT engineer, super smart guy. And you listen to him talk, like, you're just like, this guy's crazy. Like he's way smarter than you and I, but this guy's just like, he's bet his whole life, his fortune, his whole company, everything on Bitcoin and with the future. And man, if Bitcoin gets legs again and really runs, right now we're sitting today at like 39,000. If it even goes back and touches all-time high again and gets close to that $75,000-$80,000 mark, I mean, holy cow. His average price is at 30 grand, by the way, for all his Bitcoin.
It's crazy.
Which is crazy. I just think that it's something that if you haven't been looking at, start doing some research, start looking into it, understand why there are different coins, and then maybe get some exposure. Like it's if what the future is setting up with Web 3.0 and these major financial institutions are doing, you probably want to kind of follow along a little bit and start doing a little what they're doing. Because if this big shift happens and the traditional finance market as we know it has a major disruption, like crypto could be the answer. It's way easier to transact.
Yeah.
And by the way, just small disclaimer, a CBDC, central bank digital currency that people like Elizabeth Warren and the Federal Reserve are championing and promoting is a poison pill. That is a Trojan horse. That is not cryptocurrency. Make no mistake, that is a disaster. It's to be tracked. It's to be monetized or to monitored. Look what
that is to control you.
Lagarde, the Fed, or not the Fed, what do you call it? The European Central Bank president, Kathleen Lagarde, I think her name's Kathleen. She's even come out and said, like, yeah, it's so we can track and control what people spend their money on.
Oh yeah, and the Minnesota,
it's freaking nuts, man.
The whatever it is, the chair of the Fed in Minnesota.
Yeah,
he said the same thing, man. He came out tearing it apart. Like there's no good reason to have a CBDC. It does not serve any purpose.
No.
Like,
they even came out and said, it was funny. I was watching Jamie Dimon. Actually, I used to work for Chase Bank a long time ago. And actually, I've always been a big fan. And I know he gets kind of a bad rap because he's the head of the biggest bank in America. But at the same time, Jamie Dimon's kind of brilliant. And he's sitting there talking to this guy who I cannot stand. He's Ross Sorkin. I forget his name. Ross Sorkin. He's on CNBC. He's a host. And he's sitting there like basically telling JP Morgan, like Chase, that they need to dictate what people can buy and not buy, and like you shouldn't let people buy guns, and why are you doing business with people that do guns? And Jamie Dimon looks at him, he's like, dude, he's all, if you don't want us to do this or this or this, pass a law that says we can't. And he's like, you guys should be tracking who's buying guns and all this stuff. He's all, it's against the law. We can't see that. We don't want to see that. And it's like, hey, morons, this is the United States of America. I believe there are certain things that we should track or do, but believe me, the problems we have in this country are more of a failure of law enforcement. It's like every mass shooter that comes out there, it's like, oh, geez, the FBI has been at this guy's house 7 times and they were told that he's a schizo and that he has guns and they didn't do anything about it. It's like, so come on. And yeah, you want to tell Chase Bank how to lend and what they should do with their money and that they should track what we're spending our money on? You can't track what we're spending our money on.
Yeah, they're just, I mean, that's just hyperbole. They're just trying to look good, put on a show, get the votes.
That stuff gets me. That stuff gets me all fired up. Yeah. Man. Like this is America. Please, let's keep it free.
You don't make anyone safer by limiting the rights of law-abiding people.
Yeah, and we're supposed to be free people regardless. Like, yeah, we've got to trust in our society and.
Yeah,
I mean, have laws.
It's kind of like you don't make less terrorists by bombing a terrorist town.
Yeah,
you make more terrorists when you do that, guys. That's how that happened, right? Like,
that's shocking,
right? So it's like you sit here and you oppress and you take rights from people and you're doing it to try and make people safe. And it's like you drive people who are mentally unwell to do stupid things when you do that kind of stuff. Like. You got to leave people to be free.
Anyway,
to be good.
If you survive this, I don't even know how long we've been talking.
46 minutes and 7 seconds.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, this was fun.
I like it, dude.
We hopefully, if you made it to the end, I'd love to see in the comments. Don't be afraid to make comments on here, guys. But tell us what you think. Do you own cryptos? Are you into it?
And also, just as a disclaimer, if you take all your money and put it into Bitcoin and it goes down, you cannot sue us.
This is not financial advice. And we'll sign off with that.
This is not financial advice.
Until next time. These things are hot. I got to get them off.
Peace.
Peace out.